Welcome everybody to another episode, and joining us tonight is a special guest all the way from Portland, Maine, I believe, or Maine, I'll just say in general. But it's an honor to have Romano on. You know, you have quite the biography, if I can even say that, because you were sending me stuff, and I've been trying to do my own little reading too. But you're a busy man.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, the timing of this is interesting because I just am getting home from a conference in Michigan. There's a national organization called the Association for Gravestone Studies, which is the preeminent organization in the country for the study of old cemeteries and grave markers. And I've been with, part of that group for 15 years or something. And every year we go to a different place in the United States for our annual conference, which is a week-long, we call it summer camp. We call it cemetery camp because everybody feels like they're in summer camp, but it's cemetery camp. And people come from all over to participate. And I actually was given the Lifetime Achievement Award this year. It's named after a woman who was one of the original people who studied old grave markers. Her name was Harriet Merrifield Forbes. And so their organization has what we call the Forbes Award, which is a Lifetime Achievement Award that's given once per year at the conference. And I was honored with the Forbes Award this year. So it's kind of a nice cherry on top or feather in my cap or whatever you want to call it. But really, it was a thrill to be recognized by all these people for the work that I do, which is what I love to do. So, it was great.
It sounds like it.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
No problem. So I guess real quick, Ron, since it's your first time chatting with myself, define, like, how did you even get into this? Like, what made your curiosity tick to make you say, this is what I want to do?
Yeah. So briefly, my story is that I was fortunate to be able to retire early. I was only 49 when I left my full-time job. And my spouse was also retired early. So we had, a lot of years where we were able to just get up every morning and figure out what we wanted to do. And one of the things that kind of fell into my lap while I was an early retiree was my mother was working on our family genealogy. I was living in Vermont then. She was living in Maine, and we were communicating by phone and email. And she didn't travel, and we traveled a lot. So she would find these records of people in our family tree and say, "Can you go find where they are, in graveyards and stuff?" And so we took trips to Switzerland and England and Nova Scotia, closer to home, and Massachusetts, and of course in Maine, to sort of track down these family members. And what happened was, when I was in Halifax, Nova Scotia, I found the grave marker for my fifth great-grandfather, who was a loyalist during the Revolutionary War. And his grave marker was in the old burying ground in Halifax, and it had this really neat carved skull with an offset pair of crossed bones, almost like you think about a pirate logo with the skull and the crossed bones. So these were side by side and really rustic, but it was a really cool looking stone. I was fascinated by it. And I thought to myself, gee, when I get home to Portland, I wonder if I can find something similar, closer to home. So I got back to Maine and I poked around in the old graveyard here in Portland, which is 350 years old, and I found some really interesting gravestones. And so I just fell into it. And then I sort of looked at them and studied them. I reached out to a friends group. I told them that when I was in high school, I was a tour guide at the Henry Wadsworth Longfellow House in Portland. So I was used to doing tours and learning about historic sites. So anyway, I started doing tours at the cemetery. Then I joined the board, blah, blah, blah. And that was like 12 years ago. And all of a sudden, I've published 5 books. I've written a multitude of papers. I teach gravestone symbolism class. I speak all over the place to historical societies and public libraries. on gravestone symbolism, early stone cutters in Maine, and I designed tours of historic cemeteries. I've got more than 20 different sites that I've designed cemetery tours at, and I regularly run tours at 6 of them. And then on top of all that, I just get this, award. It's like, it's amazing how much it's taken over my life. And I do it because I love it. It's just such a great way to keep busy in my retirement years, And I love history. I love research. I love sharing that stuff with people through tours and programs and all that stuff and writing books. So it really is, it's like I got a good gig going, Paul. I mean, I'm feeling like, I got a good retirement life going on right now. So that's really what I know. I said I was going to do it briefly, and it's taken like 45 minutes to tell you this, but that's the gig. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I actually love it because honestly, I guess for the listeners, I apologize beforehand, but I just want to share this with Ron. But like with Ron, I feel like, people say I got into it because I became fascinated with the paranormal or the unknown, that stuff. When really in reality, I feel like the paranormal found me.
Right.
And that's what struck my interest, to be like, okay, there's something, weird going on.
Yep.
So, and they say once you acknowledge the unknown, it starts to show itself more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, kind of like you, like I became fascinated with some of the history. Like I remember, I don't have the book in front of me right now, but like it's an old scholastic book of like Civil War ghosts. But like I remember having to do a report on the Civil War battle for Gettysburg and all that. But like, I remember just being that kid trying to do the research, and still you could not see something that involved like, Civil War ghosts or Abraham Lincoln ghosts. And so it kind of fascinated in that route.
Right.
And then, that Civil War ghost book showed up, and there's some pictures in it, which whether it be real or fake, but from back in the day of these old black and white, it's really hard to me, it would feel like it's hard to fake something that's done on a 35 millimeter film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my story. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good story. And, and it rings true for me too. I mean, my personality is such that, and this was the same thing when I was a working guy. I worked, 26 years in insurance stuff before I retired. My tendency is to not do anything halfway. If I get involved in something, I'm all in. And that's the way it was at work. And that's why I was successful in my career. But also that's what's going on now. I'm all into this. I really am. And I do feel like it found me as much as I found it. There's something about the fact that I'm doing this stuff and still really interested in it that's beyond me saying, oh, here's a hobby I can do. It's not a hobby. This is like it, it's like what I'm doing. So yeah, interesting how we fall into these things.
It totally is. Yeah. And I think it's also because I have a weird story that may coincide with, what we're going to be talking about just a wee bit. But one of my questions, I guess, real quick is, during any of your books that you were writing or trying to research or etc., have you ever felt like that weird, what would be a good word? Almost like a calling, like one of the stones or something was calling to you to like have its story be shared?
Yeah. So I do have a story about that. I tend to be, when I do a tour, one of my tours in one of the cemeteries that I tour in, once in a while somebody will say, are there any ghosts here? And they want to know about, is there any supernatural going on? And I usually say to them, there may be. I'm not going to say there isn't because I'm no expert in that field. What I do is I focus on sort of the history that I can say is tangible history. And then that's what I present to people is here's what I know to be true about this site and the evolution of the site and all that. if there's other stuff going on, then I totally appreciate that. And it's, it is what it is. But here's what happened to me that kind of put the hair on the back of my neck up. My first book that I wrote was about our early stonecutter. So the first guy that was making gravestones in Portland, Maine, his name was Bartlett Adams. He showed up in 1800 in Portland. We didn't have any stonecutters making grave markers then. People had to go to Boston to get a stone if they wanted a grave marker on the grave. But this guy showed up in 1800, and he was very successful, and he's left hundreds of grave markers behind. Anyway, I was doing this book about him, writing his life story, showing images of stones that he carved, talking about his family, talking about the other men in his shop who worked there for the 28 years he was open. I mean, I really, I dove into it and was telling his story. One day, so I'm writing and writing and writing constantly. It's my first book, so that came harder than the other four have come to me. I was walking around in the cemetery one day, and I walked over to his grave because he's buried at Eastern Cemetery. And when I got to his grave, there was a pen sitting on top of his stone. And I had never seen a pen or a pencil laying around in the cemetery before, but it was right on top of his grave marker. And I reached down and I picked it up and I said to him, Bartlett, thank you for the inspiration to continue to write. I'm going to do it. And I really felt like something was going on there, that I found this pen, which is the tool that we write with when I'm in the middle of writing his story. It just kind of freaked me out a little bit. And I don't know what it's all about, but that's my story.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Real quick, is that this book right here, Ron? The Portland Historic Historian?
No. That's the second book, but that's where he's buried. So he's buried in that cemetery with his family, and there's a bunch of stones in that cemetery. The book that I wrote just before that one is called, I'll show it to you. I got it right here.
Oh, is that the early gravestones?
Yeah. Early gravestones, yeah.
So for the audio people, early gravestones in southern Maine.
Yeah, that's it. Early gravestones in southern Maine. So that's the first one, and that's his story, yeah. In fact, in that book, Paul, I put a, let me see if I can get to it quickly. So, yeah, I put a copy of that gravestone that I found in Halifax.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can kind of see it. It's, there's the rustic skull on one side and the crossbones on the other side. So anyway, yeah. So that's that story.
So since you're into the symbolisms and stuff, and so what did you find out what the skull with the crossbone, what did that even mean?
Well, it's a reminder of death. So in the colonial period, many of the grave markers had symbols that were reminders of death, and many of them had inscriptions that were reminders of death. And the idea was people understood that this was a temporary place that they were occupying, and that you should strive to live the best life that you can while here, because it's just a temporary place. So on grave markers, we see things like skulls and crossbones, coffins, shovels and pickaxes. We find hourglasses with the sand that's all run through already. Yep. It's the time has passed. Even the inscriptions say, things about remember you must die. Memento mori, remember you must die. We all die. Those were the concepts of the colonial period, really, that sort of drove that home. And it was both in the pictures and in the words that they found on the stones. And then that evolves over time. That changes to more natural symbolism for during the 1800s and stuff. But yeah, I mean, so all those little symbols that you find on early grave markers, they all have a meaning. And, many of them are simple reminders that we all must die, but other ones later on are representations of people's lives being cut short. And that's the new book that you just got. It's called Stories from Maine Cemeteries, Lives Cut Short. And the theme throughout that whole book is it's all about the symbols and the inscriptions that reflect people's lives who ended too soon, all in the 1800s. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one that, I remember when I saw the email about, like, the July's upcoming releases through Arcadia to, request if I'm interested in any, and right away yours caught my interest already.
Yeah. Cool.
So I was just
Thanks.
like, well, I mean, I honestly think what you're doing is a great way to keep stories alive. And what I want to go off of that being said is how you were talking about with your story about your ghost. Like, you're not sure, you're not an expert, you don't have to be, but I don't know if you've ever heard this, but the more, like, just by you doing your tours and sharing their stories, you're giving that energy of keeping them alive.
Yeah. And that's really important to me. So, one of the things that I tell people when I'm doing a book tour, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm on a big book tour right now through Maine for this new release, and I tell people right up front, if you've read any of my books, you will notice that I don't write about the famous people, because everybody can find out about the famous people by just going online and looking in a million different places. What I do is I focus on the people whose stories were lost over time and whose names were forgotten. That's what I like to do, is put a spotlight on the ordinary people of the community who might have lived an extraordinary life that just never got noticed. And so that's really what I do, is I talk about the ordinary people who lived in a certain area at a certain time, and I tell their stories. And that's what I really prefer to do than to write a book about the most famous people. Everybody else can write about them. I don't need to do that.
Right,
So,
right.
one of the things that I'm actually most proud of on this theme
Mm-hmm.
is in the new book. The last chapter is about the Paupers Field in Scarborough, Maine. And what happened there was I do tours at that cemetery, Dunstan Cemetery, and as I'm taking people through, my pathway through the cemetery always goes directly across this open field from one site to another site, and that's the Paupers Field. And I just always walked through it and never really paid attention to it. But I decided that I wanted to take a deep dive and figure out what's going on there. So I did a ton of research, and I was able ultimately to identify about 40 people who were buried there, whose names had been just completely erased from the records. And what I did is I gave them their names back. I created Find a Grave listings. I don't know if you know about the website findagrave.com.
Yep.
Okay, so I created listings for each one of those 40 people on Find a Grave, so that they now have their name back and their story.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and I got a memorial stone put up in the field. I convinced the Historical Society in Scarborough that we needed to remember these people. And I made a pitch for memorial stone, and they agreed. They went to the town. The town agreed. We did some fundraising, and we just did an unveiling of the stone last month
Oh,
in the
wow.
Paupers Field. Yeah, we just did it, and it's just it's, to me, that's a
That's
good
what this
thing.
is all about. Yeah.
It kind of is, and
Yeah.
what's been nice is that there's been a few people who have seen information about that from other communities and said, "Hey, great job. I think we should do that where we are too, because a lot of the other towns have these populations of disadvantaged people who just got erased over time, and we can bring them back, and that's what this is about." So, yeah.
Geez, Ron, you sound like a dude that I would be very interested to talking to more about, just because there's a couple cemeteries here where, as I walk through them, I don't have a picture to back this up, but that's just the way this type of stuff is. You never know what you're going to talk about, but in this case, you probably know what I mean. But as you're walking through these cemeteries, right, you see like these ordinary gravestones, or modern grave, we'll just say, like the bigger ones with the little plaque on at the bottom, whereas the older ones were more lingers. I can even say that, like, there wasn't really much of like a, oh God, what's a good word for it? Like my God. Anyway, like it's not. It doesn't seem like the stone itself is like on top of like let's just say a pedestal or something like some
Okay,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
like a slab, I'll just say,
yeah,
for lack of word in here. But anyway, there's some stones where it's like these people that maybe were just poor and didn't have enough, and I hate to
yeah,
say that like that,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it's like you walk through these cemeteries and you just happen to know there's something there, but you're like you gotta walk over to see it. But their grave, and I don't even want to call it a grave. It's like this like chunk of rock that just had
Yeah.
that's like
Yeah.
like you and I wrote on it.
Yeah, so but that's what happened. So for people who were unable to afford a true professionally made grave marker, they often and mark their graves with a piece of wood or a piece of field stone or what we call found stone. And sometimes they try to inscribe letters onto the found stone themselves, and they were successful in that, and other times not so much. But there's a lot of people that did that. They marked graves as best they could at the time because they didn't have the money to get a stone. And what happens is over time, those get lost because, a mower plows through and just takes out the stone, or the piece of wood rots away and then you forget there's anybody there. And the family, 2 generations later, people don't remember who was there. So it's great to find a truly made grave marker that's inscribed and has survived the time well. But the reality is, there's a gazillion people out there with unmarked graves for all kinds of reasons, and so that's absolutely true. But that's what happens to me is when I go into a cemetery and I start walking around, I look for that. What am I finding that's unusual, different? What gets my eye? I go look at it, take a picture of it, do the research on it, figure out what the story is, and then take it from there. And that's what I do, is look for the unusual. Um, whether it's a stone material, whether it's the words, whether it's the design, all kinds of things can catch your eye, and that's what I do. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, because honestly, I remember taking a picture of one time because it was like, yay big. That's
yeah,
why I'm saying, yeah, I had to like personally walk up to it to realize that was supposed to be the
yeah,
marker of somebody's
right,
grave. And
yeah,
I was just like, this is too sad. I was like, I wish there was a way, like, and this is why I'm saying it, but I'm saying like, I wish there was a way where I could figure out how I could maybe help this family to actually get a proper
yeah,
grave for them.
right, yeah. And so what I say to that is, I applaud your wanting to do that, but I love finding those old pieces of stone that are just like, homemade kind of things. That's
Hmm.
what I love finding, is because that's the charm and the history of that site. And so we those of us who are in this business of preserving and conserving cemeteries and grave historic cemeteries and grave markers, what we're trying to do is make sure that those things are protected from harm and that they're not replaced. And sometimes we have to appreciate the fact that stones are eroding away and you can't read them that well anymore. But that's the reality of what this is about, and you just have to live with that and appreciate it. They get broken, they get vandalized, sites get neglected, trees fall down on them, they just erode away. All that
Or they're
stuff
growing
happens.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It happens all over the place. I mean,
So,
that, sorry to interrupt, but just
mhm,
one quick point.
mhm.
That cemetery that's right outside of town, just west of Rutland, that was in private hands, and then the oversight organization went out of business or something. They tried to get the city to take it over, and the city said we can't afford it. It's a huge hillside cemetery, just a little bit
Evergreen
west.
Cemetery.
It might be Evergreen. It's just west of downtown, across the railroad tracks, and
So
it's a
that
big.
that sounds like Evergreen Cemetery.
It's a big one, right? And it's
Yes.
hilly.
Oh
Yeah, 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 yeah,
yes.
yeah. So that fell into disrepair. They had to lock the gates for a little while because nobody could take care of it. You know. Um, anyway, yeah,
Yeah, they lost funding for the
yeah,
caretakers. Yes,
right.
and when I last went in there, there's some. I'll just say flyers for lack of word in here, but they have some of these like flyers hanging up where you can scan this QR code to donate money to help.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Make sure that it is taken care of.
yeah. So the Vermont Old Cemetery Association, VOCA, we call it. They've been working in there to try and clean stuff up and keep, repair some of the monuments and straighten them up and doing some work. It's all volunteer though. They're all volunteers, but they've been working a little bit in there to try and pick up the slack because the place is a beautiful cemetery and it deserves to be protected. And it's just, it's up in the air what's going to happen to it.
Yeah, I don't even know what's going on with it because I'm trying to remember even the last thing I heard of it. But yeah, once that I remember, once I heard it was up in the air, and then there was something else. So that's why I'm wondering if that's where the whole QR code came into.
It probably is. Yeah, they're looking for people to just pitch in and do stuff or give money or whatever. Yeah.
There's another one too, besides Evergreen, which, by the way, I've noticed like almost every town, at least around here in Vermont, like there's another one I just found in New Haven, I think. I think that one's also called Evergreen.
Yeah.
There's the one also in Pittsford that I just recently found out that's also Evergreen. Like I'm just realizing there's a lot of Evergreen cemeteries, so it's like it's hard to keep track of which one people were talking about at times.
Welcome to my world, Paul. Welcome to my world. The same thing goes here. Laurel Hill and Greenwood, and Evergreen. Those are all big ones. And it seems like they're a dime a dozen. What happened was there was a movement in our country in the early to middle 1800s called the rise of the rural cemetery. Do you know about this?
No, I'm gonna say no.
Do you want me to quickly go through it with you guys? So
please.
The rural. Okay, so in the colonial period of our country, there were basically three kinds of places where people got buried. The first was in their own backyard. So for the rural communities and farming communities like that, people just set aside a patch on their own property and they would bury their dead on their own yard. The second category is what we would call a graveyard or a churchyard. That's a patch that's associated with the church or a meeting house. And it was basically for the parishioners and the neighbors to use for burial. And then the more common public grounds would be called a burial ground. So we had graveyards, burying grounds, and private patches. All of those get filled up as the population is growing in New England especially. And by the 1830s and 1840s, there's a new movement that arises called the rural cemetery movement. And what happened was communities started to set aside big patches of land outside of the city center in a rural area, and they would make them into like parks with winding roads for the carriages to go through and lots of trees and shrubs. And they would leave the hills, instead of leveling it like a farm, they would leave the hills naturally. They would take advantage of ponds and rivers going through and all of that to make it a very natural area. And it encouraged visitation. So those rural cemeteries gave rise to a lot of movement. People were emptying out graves on their own property and in the city burial grounds and moving them into the rural ones. And wealthy families would buy big lots there in the rural cemeteries and decorate them with big monuments. And they sort of tried to outdo each other. So somebody puts up a big obelisk and somebody else says, I'm going to put a statue on my lot, and all of that. But what it led to was this we're left today with these beautiful landscapes like the Evergreen in Rutland, which are hilly, full of trees, beautifully decorated with monuments of all shapes and sizes. And that's really the intent of the movement. It kind of changed. Today we refer to these more as garden cemeteries instead of rural, because what happened was they were put in a rural area originally, but as the cities continue to grow around them, it's not rural. Like Evergreen in Rutland is not a rural area anymore. That's a city. So it's called a garden cemetery now. So rural and garden cemetery is the same thing. But
So that makes me wonder real quick then if the one in Pittsford would be considered a garden one then.
well, they're going to be huge for the most part, really big and, you know, interesting shaped lots and curved pathways and trees of different types in there and all of that. Not flat, row by row settings anymore. Those are more utilitarian burying grounds. But I don't know the one in Pittsfield or Pittsfield, you're saying?
Pittsford.
Pittsford, yeah. I don't know exactly which one that is, but I can look
it's right. So if you look it up on Google Maps, even for people that may not know this area, I just want to share it. So if you type in, I'm trying to think of a good way to write this, like look up Pittsford Historical Society.
Yeah.
What are we right across the street is the cemetery.
Okay.
And I just recently went there because I was looking for a specific grave myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's some hills, there's some weird pathways, there's two entryways because one is like the main road and then one is like on a side street.
Yeah.
I'm assuming there once was a time there was another entryway, but it looked like they completely did away with that one, but it looked like there was at one point up in there. Anyway, the point to this is it's not in a row for sure, but there's definitely some hills. There's definitely tons of ways, so that's why I'm just wondering.
It might very well be. One of the other clues to that is if you Google that cemetery's name, if you look on findagrave.com for it, or if you Google it and you look at the town records and say, when was this cemetery established? If it's established like 1840s, 1850s, that time frame, 1860s, it's probably done in the model of a rural cemetery because that's when these were all arising. And the other clue is when you look at a cemetery's established date, let's say you're looking up a cemetery's establishment date, and it says the town established this in 1860. And then you go on to find a grave and you look for everybody who is listed there prior to 1860. And you see a ton of names, guess what? They were all moved in from other cemeteries. They were all dug up from the original graves and brought in. And so that's another indication that you've got a rural cemetery because these were centralized by towns and they encouraged people, farmers and others, to empty out this private lots and move people in. It was a huge movement, huge mass migration of bodies in the second half of the 1800s. Thousands upon thousands of people got dug up and moved into these garden cemeteries.
Yeah, so I'm trying to do a little search after what you were just saying. So because of the name being Evergreen, it's right away trying to ask me if it's the Rutland one. So that one is telling me Evergreen was founded at the Pine Hill Cemetery in 1861 before the name was changed.
Okay.
So
1861, that's a great. So then the next thing that you would do is on Find a Grave, you'd plug that cemetery in, and then you'd search for deaths 1861 and before, and see how many you get. See how many hits you get.
What one is it? Sorry, 1864.
So I think you said 1861.
Yeah.
So if you put in so it says date died, where it says date of death, put in 1861, and then there's a little drop down, and you can say before.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, before. Yep.
Okay, and then see how many listings you get.
1861, and then before. Let's see. Search. I'm seeing. Well, this is actually Pittsford. I found a Pittsford one. So, let's just say for the thing real quick, because Pittsford, I guess, now showed up for Find the Grave here. So for Pittsford, I have 183 hits for
prior to 1861.
Correct.
Yeah. So if that was the establishment date, what it's saying to you is there's 100 and something people who were buried there before it was even established as a cemetery. So clearly they were people that were brought in later from somewhere else.
Yeah, that's
I
that's
mean,
interesting to know that.
isn't it? I mean, it's crazy how many people were moved. During pandemic, when I was sitting around the house, I did a study of Eastern Cemetery in Portland to figure out how many people had been removed, and I
Hmm.
and I got over 750 people were removed from Eastern Cemetery and sent elsewhere.
Oh my goodness.
And across town, the other cemetery on Portland Peninsula is called Western Cemetery. They their historian did the same exercise. He came up with 550 removals. So there's 12 or 1300 people on Portland alone who got dug up and removed to other cemeteries.
Oh wow. Okay, so I just found the actual find the grave page for the actual evergreen one for Rutland, not
Yep.
Pittsburgh.
Yep.
So we just had what did I just say? 183 hits on that one.
Yeah.
So for the evergreen one here in Rutland, I have 363 before 1861.
And so 1861, that was the establishment date for that cemetery? Was that what you
Correct.
found? Yeah. So
Yep.
you've got nearly 400 records of people buried there before it was even a cemetery. So that tells us people were dug up from other places and moved in after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah,
It was huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know from doing some of my own digging, there's some people from like the Civil War area and
Yeah.
probably I don't want to say original homestead, but that sounds about right because I mean
Yeah.
obviously Rutland would be what do they call that? Rutland was what do they call that? Like turned into a town, chartered into a town, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah.
Chartered. Yeah,
Yeah.
let me try that. I'm just curious. Rutland was chartered by what year? 1761.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so
So
that makes sense.
yeah, because they're burying people somewhere in 1761 all over the place, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then they create this centralized cemetery
Mm-hmm.
and invite people to move bodies in, and that's what people did. All over New England, happened all over the place. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it was crazy. So the whole notion of final resting place is a crock,
Yeah, I agree.
you know?
Yeah. But then we gotta also like to counteract what you're saying too is the whole like the way you were talking about moving.
Yeah.
You could also say some of the some of the times is I don't know how often we could say this, but like if your area with the state for the example here is flooded, right?
Yeah.
I mean that flood could easily rip up the ground and then carry
Right.
the deceased away, and then
Right.
therefore how many bodies are now lost
Right.
out
Right.
of this flood.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
so yeah, which is I think the sadder part if a flood can just
Oh
do
yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
and then it makes me wonder if the bodies aren't even at rest anymore because they're not technically where they were. So, but that's a whole
Yeah.
different question.
Yeah. 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 Right.
But so Ron, you made this for the viewers to all pull it up real quick. So this one was the one that you and I were talking about prior to this, besides the stories from Maine, but the curious gravestones in northern New England.
Yeah.
So you were talking about billboards around here between
Yeah.
Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine.
Yep.
Can you talk to us about like maybe from your research of like when did these billboards kind of become a thing and why did it become a thing?
Yeah. So they became a thing around 1830 to 1840, and they were only produced until about 1880. So it was really about a 40 to 50 year period where we find them. They were only produced in New England for the most part, primarily Maine and Vermont. Interestingly, Maine's got 42 of them. Vermont's got about 30 something. New Hampshire's got 4. That's it. So in between the two states where there are lots of them, I mean, they're still pretty rare, but you know what I mean? There's only 4 in New Hampshire. So I keep working with New Hampshire people to say, go find them. There's got to be more out there. basically what happened was when I was writing the book about Bartlett Adams, the other book we talked about earlier, I surveyed a bunch of cemeteries, like 250 cemeteries or 300 cemeteries in southern Maine. I was surveying, looking for Bartlett Adams' work. And along the way, I found a few of these huge grave markers that looked like signboards that I was calling, they looked like a billboard sign because they're big slabs up on posts. And I just kind of set that idea aside for a few years. And then I kind of got hooked on that notion and went deep diving into it to discover them and to capture them all. And ultimately, as I said, I got about 40 something in Maine and then moved over to Vermont and found about 30 something there. So they are quite rare. They are mostly big marble slabs for whole families listed on one slab, elevated up off the ground on posts. And they do look like signboards. The cover you showed is a good example. It showed you how they're elevated up on posts as opposed to being stuck in the ground or sitting on a base stone like most grave markers are. And so, the question is, why did they make them like that? And some people say, well, it would have been above the snow line so people could see them. It might have just been a variation of a grave marker style. Some people wanted tall, skinny ones. Some wanted obelisks. Some wanted some ledger slabs flat on the ground. There's different monument styles, but this really rare type was only around from the 1830s to the 1880s, and really Maine, Vermont primarily. There's a couple across the border in Quebec from Vermont in the eastern townships. Mm-hmm. There's a couple, 3 of them are in western Massachusetts. There's a couple in Pennsylvania, a couple in New York, and then 2 in Ohio. But truly, the true ones that I've studied and written about, there's only about 90 that are known between all the places. And the history of them is reminiscent from a monument style that came out of England called the grave board or the grave rail. And what they did is they created these signboard type grave markers up on posts that had the inscription of the name of the person on them. And they set them not at the head of the grave like ours gravestones are, but parallel to the graves. So they were grave rails lined up. So you'd see a grave rail, long and narrow grave rail, then a body, grave rail, body, grave rail, body, set up that way. Really unusual. And I think what happened was there were some stone cutters who came over from England to New England, had memories of these grave rails and grave boards that had been created overseas, and they, rejuvenated them for a little while. They didn't last because these stones are so friggin' heavy that they would crack and break and fall. And I think it only took a few decades for them to realize this is not working well. Right. We're not going to make them anymore. There are more billboard monuments that are at risk than that are solid. And so many of them are cracked, falling, breaking, that because it's huge slabs being elevated up on posts, and the weight is just too much. They can't withstand the winters and the freezing rain and all that
environment.
Stuff. Yeah, it's too harsh.
Yeah. So funny enough, on the back of the book, which I actually do not have the picture of the back of the book. Well, maybe I can do this. So this real quick on the back of the book, there's some interesting examples here.
Yep.
So ironically, Ron, before you and I were talking, I was thinking about it, and I kind of skimmed through your book again one last time before our chat, and I actually remembered that when my lady and I were bored I call it bored, we call it road trip, but like when we find a cemetery sometimes and we haven't checked it out, we go and investigate to see what there is. So this one is I just saw the name and now it's brain farted me, Greenwood Cemetery from Bristol.
I don't remember the cemetery offhand, but chances are good that it's either Evergreen, Greenwood, or Laurel Hill, since that's the same names they continue to give to all these cemeteries.
I got it right here. Greenwood Cemetery in Bristol. All right.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's a really super crazy one, because instead of being a long, narrow panel like most of them are, This one was a smaller piece of marble that was set into a print. That's a piece of a printing press. This guy was a printer, and he wanted to use his printing press as his grave marker. So they set this into that when he died. So I put it in there because it's just crazy.
Yeah.
But it's really cool looking because it's basically a grave marker that's elevated up off the ground in the style of billboard, but just not long and narrow like most billboards are. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the audio listener, the best way I can describe it is like, think of like some sort of, man, this is going to be really, I don't really know a good way, like an old printer for, I don't know what you would use it for. So in my case, shame on me, but all I can think of is like, think of like a big toilet seat with
that's how I describe it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly how I
I
describe it.
feel bad when I say it like that.
No, that's exactly how I describe it. When I'm talking about this stone, I say think of a toilet seat that's been lifted up, and it's inscribed on both sides because the shape of the stone is like a toilet seat. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's what it is. Yeah.
Oh man, I remember Tessa and I saw it, and we're just like, "What the hell?"
I know. Yeah. Yeah,
And,
I mean, I couldn't help. I had to put it in the book. It was just too crazy not to,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't say if I've ever seen anything similar to that in Vermont ever again.
No, I haven't either. Yeah.
And another picture that I swear I have, I just can't find it, but it's the one from what do they call that? Old Rockingham Courthouse. But there's one there. There's that billboard one there.
Yeah.
I don't have a picture of that one, but I have been there and have taken a picture.
And that one's in the book. And that, and where I lived, I used to live in Saxon's River, which is part of Rockingham. I mean, Saxon's River is a village in Rockingham, like Bellows Falls is a village in Rockingham too. So that was right in my home territory. But I wasn't into grave markers when I lived there. So it wasn't even on my radar. And it wasn't until I left. And then somebody said, "Hey, do you know one of your billboard monuments is here in Rockingham?" And I'm like, holy crap. I was there all this time and hadn't even paid attention to it. But yeah, so that's in that book too. So
yeah, oh, that's Cornish. Okay, so I might be. Oh, here it is, Rockingham. So yeah, this picture is kind of small, but yeah, let me see if I can do my best here. But it's right there.
Yeah, it's a little bit small. It's a classic, large marble slab that's elevated up off on posts. So
yeah,
pretty cool.
It is cool because I mean, honestly, I didn't think of anything of it until I started seeing them, and before even reaching out to you, I didn't realize there was more. I didn't know the term was called billboard. So just interesting.
I'm the one that made that up. So,
you're the one that made it up.
Yeah. So I'm the one that made it up, and now it's basically the industry is using that as the term. So I hear from people all over the country saying, "I think I found a billboard monument." So, it's sort of taken off, but it was my invention to call it that because in my notes when I first started this 15 years ago, I had written in my notebook as I was doing my survey, "Looks like a billboard sign." That's what I said. And so I stuck it in my brain, and then all of a sudden I started talking about them. And then, the book comes out and people start reading the book and talking about it. And then that's what we are calling it now. So,
That's amazing though.
Yeah.
So I guess out of curiosity, Ron, just to maybe settle down from the Vermont side of things for a minute, but I guess out of the books that you've done, maybe even the Northern New England one here, for an example, was there any cemetery where maybe it was a challenge, or maybe as you were getting ready to edit the book, maybe that's when you got this other this hit that, hey, you should check out this cemetery because maybe you didn't stumble upon it before. Like, I guess in what I'm trying to, say for the question is, was there any for any of your books or even this one in general is like there were just too many that you couldn't fit them all in one book?
Yeah, so the main collection, I got every one that I could find, and I asked for help from the Maine Old Cemetery Association membership. There's almost 1,000 people in that group all over the state. And as I was talking about this project and saying, I'm doing a book about these really unique monuments, if you know of one, please let me know. So I got some leads from people there. And then I did the same thing in Vermont. I went out and I spoke to the Vermont people and said, I'm going to do a follow-up book because I've got enough here to do it. For Vermont and a few extras in Maine. But the one of the things that I wanted to do in doing the research for both volumes of the Billboards books, I wanted to meet them. I call it meeting the monuments. I wanted to go and see them in person. I wanted to bring my tape measure. I wanted to measure them. I wanted to touch them. I wanted to photograph them. I wanted to meet every single one of them so that I knew what I was going to write about them when I wrote, because I would do the research on who are they memorializing, what's the family story, and all that. And it worked fine, all except for one case. There was one monument that somebody sent me a picture of up in upstate Maine, 2-3 hour drive from my home in Portland. And the woman said, here's one. It's kind of in a wooded area, but here's a picture of it. And I said, yeah, that's definitely a billboard. I want to go do it. So we took a drive up 3 hours or 2.5 hours from home. Could not find it for the life of me. Came home feeling dejected and feeling like I'd wasted a tank of gas, and waited a few months, and then I decided to give it another try. I looked on Google Maps. I looked on the town's website. I thought I had it nailed down perfectly on where to go. Took another drive up north, got there, could not find the damn monument again. I called the town while I was there and I said, I'm on route XYZ. I'm trying to find this teeny little cemetery that's off the road to find this monument. And the woman said, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's pretty hard to find, but she said, you need to go, a quarter of a mile up the blah, blah, and then look for a little trail off to the left. I said, okay, thank you very much. I'm going to give it a try. I tried it. I could not find the trail. I couldn't find my way around. So I gave it my old try twice in a row. Could never find it. So that's the only one I never was able to actually touch and measure myself. I relied on the picture from the woman who would send it to me, and I did find records about it online. So it's in the book, but it's the only one that I never got to actually meet and touch. Yeah. All the ones in Vermont, I did. I mean, I put 5,000 miles on the car going back and forth to Vermont to go to all these cemeteries. And all the New Hampshire ones, I was able to see. All the Maine ones. I mean, the 3 in Massachusetts. The couple in Quebec, I went up to see those as well. So, yeah, I got all of them down except for, the ones outside of New England and that one in Maine, which I've just given up on. I don't want to see it now. I'm over it. You won, you Gravestone in the Woods, you won. I'm done with you. So,
you just out of curiosity, I don't know why, since you just said more up north of Maine, but one of my bucket lists, maybe down in the near future, would be what do they call it? It's like the GO train area.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
Wait a minute, what is that?
They call it the GO train area in Maine.
Oh, no, I don't know what that is.
Really? It's like a place in let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Is it way up north?
Yes.
Aroostook County. They call it the county way up there.
Northwest
Piscataquis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the GO trains are.
Apparently. Go like GOAT?
Yeah, like GHOST. Yep.
Oh, Ghost. Got it. Okay, Ghost.
Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
Oh no, I don't know about the Ghost train. No.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Let's see here. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick for you. So here it is. Hopefully you can see it.
I can look it up too.
Right here. This is the best I can do. But let me see if I can zoom in. Is that
yeah, cool. So that
Yeah,
actually runs. It does a trip up there, or is it a stationary train that you visit?
no, these trains are just like abandoned. Like
Oh, okay.
they're just there abandoned in the woods.
Oh, okay. I do not know about them, but I'm gonna look it up. Yeah, ghost trains. Okay.
Yeah, like there's a lot of fascinating things in
Oh,
this
neat.
area.
Yeah. Wow.
So like
So it's
yeah,
like abandoned. Abandoned.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, so it I'm trying to figure out there's a lot of pictures for this, but I'm just trying to figure out if there's like a way to maybe determine. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. So
Wow.
like here's one during the winter even.
Yeah.
So but I'm just curious because I would just love to see the weird abandoned trains in the woods.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
No, I don't know about them. So you should come. Yeah.
yeah, I totally should.
Cool.
But it's been a while even because I used to go to like Old Orchard Beach in
Oh
Maine
yeah.
for family trips and stuff like that. So
Yep.
but yeah, I think if I remember right, this would be a pretty gnarly trip to get over to where
I
the
would think so. You're probably gonna have to come like down southeast and then go back up again. Yeah, Piscataquis County.
yeah, that's got to be like
Yeah,
way up there.
that's a few hours for you.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be. Let's see, I'm plugging it in right now. Oh god, yeah,
Because
it's
I
gonna
think,
be
yeah, I think
7 hours and 14 minutes
oh
for me.
wow, okay. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So
geez,
that's long haul, yeah.
yeah, it is a long haul, but would it be worth it? Oh yeah,
Yeah. Do it.
but yeah, totally. I'm just trying to think here, Ron, because oh well, not real quick before maybe we wrap things up. So we'll talk about your new book once again. I'll pull it up.
Yeah.
So stories from Maine, cemeteries, lives cut short.
Yep.
There is one that I am kind of fascinated by because it involved a murderer or something.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you could just quickly share about it.
Yeah.
But it was your chapter 14. It
Yep.
was a murder in yep.
Biddeford. Yeah. So yeah. So basically, that book, what it's set up, it's all again around 1800s people. So I don't write about anybody modern. It's all 19th century.
Mhm.
The theme of the book is lives cut short, and so it's a series of 5 sort of more robust stories about people whose lives ended too soon, and then filled in around those 5 stories are a dozen other chapters, which are the symbolism, the snapped tree branch, the fallen, the flower bud, the lambs, the slumbering children, the inscriptions, people killed by lightning and drownings and all that kind of stuff. It's all, in there. So that's the way the book is set up. So the story that you're talking about is one of the 5 more robust stories. And it's basically the story of a woman named Rose Vincent who came out of Massachusetts and came up to Maine to work in the mills. She had a very jealous boyfriend whose name was Fred Savage. And basically, they were both married to other people at the time. They had a little love affair. This is 1878. They're both, lower income people. She had a bunch of kids. And so he gets jealous because she goes down to Massachusetts, and he follows her down there and sees her with another man. And then when he brings her back to Maine, he confronts her and says, were you with this guy? And she admits it, that yeah, she was hanging out with this guy. Well, he's very jealous. He decides to take her out for a little boat ride on the river. And when he does, he puts some stuff in her bottle, so they're having a drink, and it kind of knocks her out a little bit, and he strangles her. He ties her up. He strangled her, so she's dead. He ties a rope around her ankle and ties her to the wharf and leaves her there, assuming that the tide's going to take her out and that people are going to think she just drowned on her own or something. What happens is the next day, a fisherman that's going down the river to go out to the ocean to go fishing discovers the body on the rocks and thinks that this is a routine drowning until he sees finger marks on her throat and a rope around her ankle and realizes this is no ordinary drowning, this is a murder. What happened was, because I'm not going to give it all away because I want people to read it, but what happens is that her body was held in the receiving tomb in town for a while until they could identify her. And this murder created such a sensation in Biddeford that thousands of people lined up to view her body. I mean, the police reported in the newspaper that they had thousands of people coming through to look at her body and try and identify her, just see her because they were interested. Um, and so her jealous boyfriend, Fred Savage was his name, was the number one suspect, and they quickly tracked him down. Basically, the story that's in the book tells the story of his trial, his life in prison, who they left behind, and it fills in the details about what happened to her. So yeah, she lost her life too soon, left behind some kids, and it was just a sensational murder. And it's a story that was largely forgotten because neither one of them were famous, and then I discovered the story and started to research it, and it's like, holy smokes, this took over the town for weeks. They were just totally, enamored by this story and what had happened. So yeah, so there's that one of the stories. Then there's the Poppersfield story. Then there's a African American barber who was accused of manslaughter in 1828 and had to go on trial. And you have to imagine what it's like for a black man who killed a white man in 1828 to go through that process. And then there's a woman from South Portland who held secrets from her family for 100 years. So there's a bunch of kind of interesting stories in there. And then again, we get to the symbolism and you see what the symbols, how they reflect lives cut short. So I'm proud of this book. I'm really, I'm happy how it came out, and people seem to be really responding well to it when I do my book events. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. Like right away, even just from kind of just a little bit of skimming through it when I could before some hectic things came up. But I've noticed in the amount of differences between your new book to even the Curious Gravestones. I would notice it seems like, I don't know if I want to say it like this, but I think it fits. It's like you expanded on it. If I can say that.
Yeah. I mean, the two Billboards books are so kind of focused on a monument style, and so you got to kind of be interested in that monument style to want to read the story of the people there, because it's, that's kind of the focus of that book. Mm-hmm. This new one has a much broader appeal, because who isn't interested in learning about a shipwreck and a murder and a pauper's grave, and a guy convicted of murder, and a woman who held secrets from her family, and all that stuff. They're interesting stories, and so people want to read them. So I mean, it does have broader appeal, I think, and that's why people seem to be responding to it, which is great. I'm happy about it.
Which goes back to my comment before, which is like what you're doing is keeping the stories alive, which is again given the thing entity the energy to keeping it alive, keeping them alive. Real quick, I can think of an interesting story. I don't know the how it really ends, but I just know enough to basically just say, back in the day, probably 19th century, this lady was pregnant, very young, like 14, 15 maybe, and she went to go get an abortion from this guy. This guy ends up, they say, accidentally killing her, but like he freaked out so bad that he tried to run, and he did get a ticket for the Amtrak here in Rutland, and he was caught there. So the end game, as far as I'm aware, was he was tried, but he ended up getting a plea deal, and I don't know what happened after that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're after, looking for these interesting stories that, you might get a snippet from the news that tells you a little bit about it, and then you dive into it. And then what I do is I go find their grave marker, or look at the cemetery where they're at, and put it all together in the form of a story. I put the story together by looking at where they buried, what's the stone look like, and what's the story behind it. What's really cool is when their grave marker actually tells the story by saying killed by lightning or drowned, in the river, or whatever happened. That kind of stuff is just amazing.
You don't see that much anymore like that.
No, not anymore. Which is why we want to protect these things, and
That's a good idea.
share
Good
them.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Well, all right,
Yeah.
Ron. Well, is there anything that I did not give you a chance that you would like to share? Maybe like a favorite story, like a different favorite story out of your new one, real quick, as a
I
teaser.
mean, I think we've kind of covered it. I would just say if people are interested, I know you guys are Vermont based and I'm in Maine, so there's a difference there in the state. But some of these stories, it doesn't matter where they actually occurred. They're really interesting stories. So if people are interested, and I hope they want to pick the book up, and you can refer people to me and I can help them get a book autographed if they want, or they can get it online at Amazon, or, there's different ways to get it. But they're being sold locally in bookstores here in Maine, of course, because it's a Maine-based book. But I've got a supply here, and I'm doing a huge book tour through Maine from now through early November, and meeting a lot of people and having fun doing that. So yeah, I can help people out if they want to pick up a copy.
Yeah, and I can do a shout out real quick for both these books actually from my recent trip. Is Bear Pond Books actually does carry these.
Oh,
both
good.
these
Good,
books.
good.
So
great.
the only difference was this was in the history section of Vermont.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So and then your latest one, Stories from Maine Cemeteries Where I Cut Short, that was more in the paranormal section, which I thought was interesting.
Really? I didn't know Bear Pond picked up the new book. That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't get to snap a picture of it because it was kind of one of those quick glances. I was like, oh, look.
Oh, I'm going to be in Stowe later this month. Actually, I'll stop in there and I'll sign a few of them for them. They love that.
Keep me posted. Maybe we can meet up or something.
Oh, all right. Good idea. I'll let you know when I'm going to be there. Great.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
Yeah. And I guess I know most people sometimes, Ron, have like a website. Do you have a website or anything?
I don't. I should. I keep on, every time I write a new book, I'm like, I get a website. I shouldn't. I have a Facebook page, but that's the best I can do at this point. I don't, I don't have a website. So
nope, it's all good.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, if people are interested, I'll definitely send them your way.
Send them my way. That's fine. And I appreciate the time, Paul. This is great to talk with you in person.
Yeah. As much a person as I can say, Ron, until we can actually shake hands. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good. Great. All right. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. For everybody listening, if you got this far, you know what to do. Just, let us know. Have you found any of these things, whether it be inside the Green Mountain State or outside the Green Mountain? We would like to hear from you, and keep stories alive, because you just never know when life will eventually just get cut short.
Right. Good one. Thanks.